Hey, Tigers, it's me. It's Mr. Allen. And today I want to talk to you about the hero's journey. You should have a note sheet that looks like this circle. Mine has boxes on it and yours doesn't, which is fine. So we're going to go through this pattern that a lot of stories use. This was developed by Joseph Campbell many, many years ago. And he wrote a book about it called Hero with a Thousand Faces. And it's essentially just an archetypal structure that we see in a lot of literature. And I'll talk about some examples. I like to use Star Wars for examples, but you could do this with a lot of different stories that have a hero and kind of follow a pattern, right? If you go and search online for a hero's journey kind of diagram, there's all sorts of different ones, and there's all sorts of different names for these things. It's all essentially the same pattern. I like to have my diagram go this way, so I'm going to be going around the clock face rather than sometimes they make it go the other way. So let's start right up at the top, and up at the very top we are in our ordinary world in a story. And so the very first thing we have is the person's normal life, our hero's normal life. So this is, Frodo when he's in the Shire, or Luke Skywalker when he's on Tatooine and he's a moisture farmer, or we have Neo in the Matrix and he's a computer programmer. They just live in their normal life, doing their regular stuff. And then at some point at the beginning of the story, they get a call to adventure. And then sometimes there's multiple calls, but usually it's somebody coming and saying, hey, I need you to go do this. And, like in Star Wars, it's Princess Leia on R2-D2, and she says, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. Or Neo gets some info, get somebody contacting him, follow the White Rabbit. Frodo is told by Gandalf, hey, I need you to go and do this thing for me. It's all this, hey, we need you to go on an adventure. And then sometimes there's multiple call to adventures because the hero will usually refuse it the first time. They'll be like, no. Like in Star Wars, Luke Skywalker says, no way, I can't go on an adventure. I have too much to do. I have, chores and responsibilities. And that's usually in the ordinary world. We're in the beginning of the story. Then we start meeting some people. So we start gaining some helpers. There's some tests that happen. There's sometimes we meet a false hero. We usually will meet a wise old man. And so, for instance, in Star Wars, the wise old man is Obi-Wan Kenobi. In Lord of the Rings, it's Gandalf. And, they'll have some tests to go through. There's some minor challenges. A false hero is usually one that looks like a hero, but then turns out not to be. So in Star Wars, that's Han Solo. He seems to be a really great hero, and he turns out okay in the end. But at the beginning, he's all about it. He's all in it for himself. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where we cross a threshold. That's why there's this line right here. And you can see we have the ordinary world up here, and we have the special world down here. But we cross a threshold, and we enter a new world. In Star Wars, this is where we go into outer space from Tatooine, or in Matrix, we go into the Matrix. There's new rules in this world than there was before. And this can happen at a variety of places, like maybe they go to the new world and then they meet the wise old man. That's fine, because it's all kind of the same pattern. It doesn't have to be exactly in the same order. Once they get into the new world, they absolutely have more trials, and often they will meet with a goddess-like character. So, in Star Wars, this is where we meet Princess Leia, and in Matrix, this would be meeting with Trinity. We're meeting with a goddess-like character. Eventually, we're going to start approaching what Joseph Campbell and other scholars call the cave, the innermost cave. We have a descent. And often, if you watch these movies, there will be literally, we're going down, right? So maybe we're going downstairs. Maybe we're going down an elevator. Maybe we're going, like in The Matrix, they go into a subway, right? They go down. in Star Wars, they go down into the trash compactor. And then when they get down there, they are in the abyss or the innermost cave, and they endure a supreme ordeal, some sort of big test, the final test. And oftentimes this is death, whether real or symbolic, and then often rebirth. So, for instance, in The Matrix, when they're in the subway and that the agent Smith is beating up on him, they think that Neo is going to die, and he's like all bloody and he's on the ground, and what's going to happen? But then he comes back, right, stronger. In the trash compactor, Luke gets pulled under by whatever that alien was, that water alien. And then for a while, they're like, oh no, where's Luke? He seems to be dead, but then he comes back and he's fine. Once the hero takes care of this supreme ordeal that's at the lowest point in our story, we then usually gain some sort of reward, and that can be just powers, that could be a sword, like a literal sword, that could be an elixir, that could be a ring, that could be whatever, right? It could be magic. And there's some sort of transformation. They are now the master of two worlds. They can do both. They can do the stuff in their ordinary world, and now they can do the stuff in the special world. There's often a refusal to return. So if you remember in Star Wars, they're shooting at the stormtroopers, and they go, "Luke, come on, let's go." And initially, he doesn't go until dead Obi-Wan Kenobi. Spoilers, everybody, for a movie that's been out for decades, right? Dead Obi-Wan Kenobi says, "You have to go," and then he goes, right? Then they cross over that same threshold and go back into the ordinary world. So this is leaving the Death Star. This is going back to the Shire. This is going back to the real world, or the Matrix rather than the real world. We cross, and then now we're the master of two worlds. And so now we have the ability to do both. And oftentimes, when we come back to the ordinary world, the hero will have to use their newfound powers to kind of solve a problem in the ordinary world. In Lord of the Rings, Frodo and his friends have to solve the problem in the Shire, and so they are able to use the things and the experiences that they've had to help their friends in the ordinary world. And then they're set up and ready to go on another one. So maybe they go back to ordinary life, and then eventually another wise old man comes and tells them, hey, it's time for an adventure again, and they can refuse it again. So it's a cyclical thing. But what we'll see, man, that was weird. What we'll see is this happens in like almost every single story that involves a hero, and maybe not every single piece of it, but most stories will follow this general pattern. So hopefully you wrote some stuff down in your notes, and see you, Tigers. Bye-bye.